Welcome to Class Talk, Law for Sustainable Cities, a podcast about cities, law, and environmental sustainability. This podcast engages in different urban and environmental legal themes and features special guests, including our CLAS researchers. CLAS is a research chair under the National Research Foundation Research Chair Initiative and operates under the Faculty of Law at the Northwest University in South Africa. I am Dr. Rumbidzai Wendy Msangaza, a postdoctoral research fellow at CLAS and your host for this session. Our topic for this discussion is breathing unequal air, rethinking air quality in South African cities. A recent report released by Greenpeace Africa and the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air paints a grim picture. It reveals that in 2023 alone, for example, 42,000 South Africans lost their lives due to exposure to fine particle pollution, including more than 1,300 children under the age of 5. The economic toll is staggering, an estimated 960 billion rand, or about 14% of GDP, lost to illness, early deaths, and pressure on our health system. At the heart of this crisis are communities in the Highveld, Gauteng, and Mpumalanga, areas with heavy coal-fired power stations and industrial activity. The data is clear: coal is killing us. Yet behind the statistics lies a deeper question. How do we confront air inequality in our cities, and what role can law and policy play in ensuring justice? To help us unpack these questions, I'm joined today by Professor Roelof Burger. Prof. Burger is an accomplished atmospheric scientist specializing in weather nowcasting, climate change, cloud seeding, weather modification, weather radar, and air pollution. With more than 25 years of dedicated research experience, he has led and collaborated on over 50 scientific field campaigns across 12 countries, significantly enhancing our understanding of anthropogenic emissions and their impact on weather and climate. Prof. Burger has been involved in high-profile international projects such as the South African Rainfall Enhancement Project, the UAE Rainfall Modification Project, and feasibility studies for rainfall enhancement in Saudi Arabia, Mali, Libya, and India. He has published over 60 peer-reviewed journal articles and successfully supervised several PhD and MSc students. His research has been recognized internationally, notably receiving the Weather Modification Association's Distinguished Service Award in 2018 for outstanding contributions to weather modification operations and research. Currently, he serves as professor and chair of the Climate Change, Air Quality and Impacts Research Program at the Northwest University. Prof. Burger, welcome to Class Talk. We are honored to have you with us today.
And it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So before we dive into the detail, let me just set the scene for our listeners. You have pointed out that while air quality is a genuine concern, most of our mortality estimates rely on global models. They don't always capture our urban realities. For example, dense informal settlements, traffic-clogged corridors, or households relying on wood and paraffin. So with that in mind, let's start with the big picture. Why is air quality such a critical yet under-discussed issue in South Africa, especially in relation to vulnerable communities?
I would say the first reason is that air pollution is a silent killer. It works slowly and silently. And because of that, when we think about the priorities for communities to get upset with or to complain about, it doesn't reach our senses. There are some things that people would think is associated with pollutants, for example, bad smells in the community due to sewage or something. But these are not the things that actually kill you. The drivers of health risk is particulate matter pollutants, and then also ozone, and these are invisible to the senses. The particles that kill you are so small that you can't see them. I can tell you a story. For example, we were busy doing research in Sharpeville, and I've got a small low-cost sensor that counts these particles in the environment. And the World Health Organization puts the threshold for impact around 40 micrograms per cubic meter. And when I went into somebody's home, this sensor was maxing out at 65,000 micrograms per cubic meter. So the sensor could not measure the air pollution inside the home. It was so bad that I struggled to breathe, and I told the people, "Can we please stand outside?" And then standing outside in still polluted air, but much better than in their homes, I asked them, where do you see the problem of air pollution? And right far in the distance, we could see the stacks of Eskom, and they pointed to Eskom, saying that is their impression of what air pollution is. So I would say that is the number one reason. It is invisible, and it works over so long a time frame that it doesn't reach our threshold for caring and complaining.
Thank you very much, Prof. That really underscores the urgency then that, it's not just about pollution particles in the air, it's about inequality being breathed in daily. So when the most vulnerable, as you just painted now, are the most exposed, it turns clean air, which is supposed to be a basic right, then into a privilege. So let's now turn to your own work. What are some of the key findings or insights you have drawn from your recent research on air quality in our cities?
Yeah, we've been working on this for a number of years, I would say more than a decade. And the first conclusion you can safely draw is that in most urban areas in South Africa, we breached the World Health Organization guidelines and also the South African ambient air quality standards. So you don't need to look far to find a place that has an air pollution problem. That would be the first. The second, and you've already highlighted this, is the disproportionate impact on poorer communities. And we have been one of those loud voices trying to bring the focus on these communities. And it's not a very politically correct topic, because you will find that most of the effort of government is focused on industry and energy sector. And these are, in a sense, much more easy problems to solve because there's one polluting source and it's very easily identifiable. But when you move into these dense, low-income areas, there's not one problem. It's a myriad of problems. And underlying that is the big problem that we face in South Africa, and that is poverty, that is driving these multiple sources of pollution that is impacting people. And then on top of that, you also have that these people have disproportionate exposure to other health risks like poor diet and lack of access to healthcare. And so this is one of the things that we've been focusing on, is shining the light on these problems and trying to get government to shift their focus to also include these areas. Other areas that we've worked on is looking at monitoring. We're really trying to help government to improve their monitoring so that we can understand this problem better, right? And in South Africa, we have a very large network of ambient monitoring sites, but it's not well maintained, and the data is not doing well. So this is a problem that we're hoping that we can do better on in the future. And the last one is some interesting mitigation options. We've worked on projects where, for example, we try to insulate people's homes. And in these poor areas, when you have a poorly built home, then people have to use more energy to keep themselves warm. And in that process, they typically use the cheapest available fuel, which is dirty coal or wood, like you've mentioned. And this exacerbates both climate change and air quality issues further. So doing something so small as just making sure people's homes are better constructed can also address these issues.
That is such a powerful insight, because then it shows how the numbers that we often see in global reports can hide or mask the lived realities of our cities and the reality in a country like South Africa, for example, as you've mentioned, where there's a high rate of poverty and other health risks, which is the reality on the ground. So basically, without this locally grounded data, then we're fighting blind as the gaps in local data and regulation make this crisis even harder to confront, I would say. So now you also raise a theme on how structural and spatial inequalities shape who suffers most from poor air quality. Could you explain how structural and spatial inequalities shape the impact of poor air quality across urban spaces?
Yes, sometimes when we talk about structural inequality, people will have, it's something that the academics understand, but it's very difficult for the normal person in the street to understand what do you mean by structural inequalities. And nowhere will you find it more apparent than in South Africa. When you go to any city, the structure of the city has this legacy of apartheid planning, where we put poorer communities close to industrial zones with lack of access to better services. We plan them to be dense, and then we let them go. And over the last few decades, there's been all this unplanned expansion of these areas. So now we have this dichotomy in our cities where on the one hand we have the more affluent places where there's green spaces that buffer pollution, there's better infrastructure, there's better services, and the people living there are wealthier, they've got more access to healthcare, and they can reduce their own health risks in so many ways. And on the other hand, spatially very well identifiable and typically close to these other industrial and urban pollution areas, we sit with these poor communities. So from a structural point of view, we've inherited this problem, and then we've done nothing to address this over the last few decades, and things have just gone from bad to worse. I think that is the big problem that we're having to face. And you've mentioned also that these vulnerable communities, which mostly include children, women, elderly in the communities, people that live and breathe inside these dense low-income areas, they are subjected to these, as one environmentalist called it, a death of 1,000 cuts.
Thank you, Prof. That paints a rather stark picture. The idea that your postcode, basically, loosely speaking, can determine your lung capacity, it really drives home how inequality is not just visible in housing or income, but literally written into the air South Africans breathe. So let's talk about the law. In your view, how well are South Africa's current regulatory frameworks and policies addressing air pollution? And where do you see the major gaps?
Well, our rights are so beautifully enshrined in the Constitution, and then we have the National Environmental Management Act, and then we also later got the National Environmental Air Quality Act, and together these could be seen as this perfect regulatory vehicles that is very progressive on paper, but where enforcement is weak. So, like many things in South Africa, I think theoretically we are doing the right thing, but when it comes to implementation, we fall short. I would say there may be a case to be made that our legislation is too complex and too detailed. What's interesting is if you looked at a number of these court cases that we've seen in South Africa, the judges didn't even go down to the legislation. So they didn't even look at the National Environmental Air Quality Act. They stopped at the Constitution and said that is where the problem can be managed from. So maybe we can simplify things. But the one thing that we should say when we talk about trying to solve problems is that this is maybe one of the original sticky problems. If you know this idea of sticky problems, it was published in the 1970s. And that means there are no clear, easy solutions. So we should also not be naive to think that there are these very quick fixes out there, and it's just people's inability to do them, or rich capitalists that's not wanting to do that. That is definitely not the case. This is a very, very difficult problem to solve, and we don't always know clearly what the answer is. Adding to that, massive capacity issues at the municipal level, where the air quality problems actually have to be faced. I've mentioned the heavy focus on industrial activity, neglecting all the other aspects and all the sources that has a major impact. And then lastly, we have a beautiful idea in our regulatory frameworks to integrate all these different spheres of governance. But in practice, that is very poorly done, so that we don't see city planning, transport, and even disaster risk incorporate issues like air quality and climate change. We still have this silo approach, even though we've got integrated development plans. The integration part is not done well at the moment in South Africa.
Thank you, Prof. That is deeply concerning and worrying to hear how weak enforcement of existing legal frameworks, which, as you perfectly captured, are the perfect regulatory vehicles that we have, at least on paper, how the weak enforcement then continues to undermine people's rights. But I think the key takeaway from your response to this question is there are no easy solutions. There are no quick fixes. So there's a lot of work still to be done regarding this. So finally, looking ahead, what practical interventions or policy shifts do you believe could improve air quality outcomes in the long term?
I think it's not said enough that the root cause of this problem is strongly tied to our economy. If you look at first world countries like the US and Europe, and you look at the trajectory of their air quality problems, you will find that at some stage in their development cycle, they became rich enough to focus on these problems and to clean up their act. And we now, on the other side of this problem, we're still trying to solve poverty and inequality. And there's a good argument to be made that we will never be able to solve air pollution problems until we've fixed poverty. So that when we're trying to solve the problem of air quality and climate change, my first suggestion would be, let's start with the economy. Every economic activity has to be put into the context of these are solutions to solve our biggest health and environmental problems. That would be my first thing. And then secondly, I would say we have to do less better, specifically in terms of monitoring and understanding and managing air quality problems. We have this very detailed approaches with like more than 100 ambient air quality stations, but we're doing a very poor job of maintaining that. So maybe just scaling down our fancy plans, not try and match European and American solutions, but do it in our own way, in an African way, and to do it a better job. We spoke about these dense low-income areas. Energy for poor people is extremely important. So when we think about problems like Eskom, we can't be talking about Eskom problems without reminding people that if there's energy issues that's making energy expensive, we are exacerbating air quality in low-income communities. So, and then lastly, I would talk about this problem of integration. The benefit of understanding the large impact of air quality and air pollution on South Africans is that we can use that as motivation to do everything better, to plan better our urban spaces, to do better transport planning, to do better planning around our energy. All of these are not just to make people's lives better. It's actually saving people. If we solve these problems, we are lessening this impact of air pollution on people's health. And we estimate this impact to be in the order of 3 to 4% on our GDP. That is about the size of the agricultural sector in South Africa. So we are talking about such a huge impact. And whenever we're busy with something, we have to remind ourselves, guys, we could be saving people's lives by just building a house better.
That is such an important call to action. What you've outlined isn't then about just the technical, it is about justice, and it goes down to justice. A just transition, in this case, has to be visible on the streets, in the bylaws, and in the daily lives of people trying to survive. From your whole our whole discussion today, I can gather that clean air cannot remain a luxury good. It has to be guaranteed as a public right, because while you have spoken that some people can buffer or shield themselves, what happens then to those who cannot, which are the most vulnerable members of our community? And it is important that you have also mentioned how we need African solutions to African problems, how we do not have to replicate European solutions to African problems. So that brings us to the end of today's episode. I think if we had more time, we could have extended it, because this has been so engaging and interesting, and it goes down to a lot of issues that we are facing in South Africa, not just the air, but also things to do with the economy and the poverty, and things that actually help then to solve the problem of air quality. Prof. Burger, thank you very much for joining us today and for sharing your insights on this urgent issue. It is clear that breathing unequal air is both a health and justice challenge. South Africa's constitution guarantees us the right to a healthy environment, but ensuring the fulfillment of that right will require stronger law enforcement, more accountability, and an African solution, or a South African solution, to the problems we have in South Africa, so that we do not leave vulnerable households behind. To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, follow, and share Class Talk on your platforms, and keep this conversation alive in your communities, classrooms, and policy spaces. I'm Dr. Wendy Mzangaza, and this has been Class Talk, Law for Sustainable Cities.